Thank you, thank you. And next up, we have the pleasure to invite the keynote speaker of the day, Mr. Andrus Ansip, who is the Vice President of Digital Single Market at European Commission. Needs not more introduction than that. We all know his strong past and results. And I also admire him because he really understands what the AI scope is doing around the world. And to give a quick history lesson, AI isn't something that has appeared suddenly in past 10 years. It has sort of invented in 50s. And before one of the scientists called Alan Turing was the guy who was defining AI as something when we cannot understand if it's a person or a machine. And nowadays we can pretty much say that one of the definitions is to give decision power over to machines instead of people. So I would like to invite Andrus on the stage and give him a warm round of applause, and then I start with a warm-up question. Thanks. Before we jump into the talk, Andrus, when was the last time you were not sure if the decision was made by human or machine, when the AI started to play a role in your life?
I think every day driving the car, you're not able to understand who is doing that, you or this AI driving your car, if you have that kind of car.
Amazing. Thank you very much for this quick answer. And let's dig into the speech. Give one more applause.
Yeah, I don't want to bother you and to waste your time, but I faced with some kind of situations where I wanted to discuss with some people, but there were only machines talking with me. More than a year ago, I was in Germany. We went from Brussels to Hamburg, and then from Hamburg to Lüneburg. Next morning, we had to go back to Hamburg. We decided to take the train because to stay there in rush hour, no sense. So my colleague went to railway station and bought those railway tickets, 23.39. So, and he got the receipt also, printed out 23.40. Well, it wasn't possible to buy those tickets online. Next morning, we went to the railway station. There was a train. We took our place, and then we started to travel, and then a lady came, asked for tickets. We gave our tickets. She said, sorry, it's not valid. It's for yesterday, not for today. We said that, sorry, 23.39, 23.40, you know, there were no trains after that. No, it doesn't matter. Then, after some weeks, I got a letter. I had to pay 60 euros as a penalty and 5 years for administration. Well, I sent a letter once again to those people about 23.39, 23.40, no trains after that, and so on. I got once again, after a month, a letter. It was so sophisticated legal text, I wasn't able to understand about this. And then again, and again, and again. Then I had to pay 105 euros already. And then I decided to pay. My colleague decided not to pay. So one day, my colleague said that he got the letter. It was null and void. So they said, no basis to ask for some kind of fine. I continued to send letters, but they already had my 105 euros. So nothing happened, just sophisticated text, legal text. And I turned to my legal service, and they said that 105 euros, let it stay. It's too expensive to start to argue with them. So there we are. But it's not allowed, according to General Data Protection Regulation in the European Union. Well, but the question was about Europe and where we are in global context. When thinking about solutions based on artificial intelligence using relatively small volumes of data, then I would like to say that Europe is doing really well. I can even say that Europe has leading position in this meaning in the world. But when thinking about general artificial intelligence, then it's so-so. According to McKinsey, in the year 2016, we invested in Europe altogether into AI $3 to $4 billion US. In Asia altogether, $8 to $12 billion US. And in northern part of America, 15 to 23. There is a small difference between 23 and 4 in Europe. But I even think that if we will put right now maybe, yeah, but 4 years ago, 20 billion into AI, it will be a waste of taxpayers' money. Why? Because if there is no access on data, then we can just dream about having leading position globally, but it will never happen so. When thinking about data, then we all know that in China, they have huge data sets. They have 1.3 billion images, not only portraits, but also profiles and from different angles. And in practice, they don't have those personal data protection rules. And of course, for China, for Chinese people, it's much easier to create some kind of facial recognition systems based on artificial intelligence. Well, when thinking about Americans, then everybody knows. They have Facebook, they have Google, they have Amazon. It means they have huge data sets they can teach their computers. And now, when thinking about huge data sets we have in Europe, we have to think about cloud services. And this sector is highly developed in Europe. But once again, 50% of those cloud services in Europe are provided by Amazon, Microsoft, and IBM. It means they have also our data sets to teach their computers. And even when thinking about our local municipalities or hospitals, then too often it happens so that those global service providers are able to provide those services with higher quality and lower prices. And if they will not get access to some kind of data sets in our hospitals, it's not a big deal for those global service providers, because this is just about the another data set for them. And the question was for us, from where our small and medium-sized enterprises, our startups, have to get access to those data. So, General Data Protection Regulation says that forceful data localization is prohibited. So we know about GDPR. We had really hot debates in Europe. Our own people were against GDPR, and also those global service providers, they were against this GDPR. They said it's too much bureaucracy and so on. And now everybody says it's a real success story. After this Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal, approximately 100 countries around the world, they got their first ever data protection rules. And in majority of cases, those data protection rules, they are just like copy-paste of our rules. We can say that our general data protection regulation became as a global standard. And this GDPR we have in the European Union, this is not something totally new out of the blue, but this is average of those data protection rules we already had in the European Union. In some countries, in Germany, in Austria, for example, they had to lower the level of protection of those data. In some other countries, they had to increase this level. This is an average. And of course, developers, they are happy. Instead, try to understand about 28 different sets of rules in the European Union. Now, you have to understand about just one set of rules in the European Union. Then, this is just about personal data, GDPR. But we have now free flow of data solution. So, what is wrong with those data? Why it was needed to regulate free flow of data in the European Union? It wasn't easy. We failed with this proposal even 2 times in the European Commission. They said, not enough evidence. Sorry. We already have in the European Union 56 different sets of rules dealing with forceful data localization in 21 EU member states. What kind of evidence is needed? So, but sorry, for some people, it's quite difficult to understand about those digital issues and data flows. When people, they have to think about Rolls-Royce, then majority of people, they think about this fancy car. But this is about BMW. Rolls-Royce, it's mainly about engines on airplanes. But it's not about metal. Rolls-Royce is one of those biggest data companies we have in the European Union because Rolls-Royce, together with Microsoft, connected online all those engines on those airplanes. And it's about AI also. So it's about predictive maintenance. It's not enough to say that you have to change some parts after every 500 working hours or I don't know how many working hours. They know exactly because of sensors, because of data analytics, because of artificial intelligence, when they have to change those parts. Well, it's also a green solution. They can say that take higher, take lower, speed up, slow down, and then so on, because they have also access to weather data. Well, it's about airplanes, but it's everywhere so. Trains. Siemens is producing really good trains. They're using those trains also in Spain, for example. If there will be forceful data localization, does it mean that Siemens has to have their data centers in all those 28 EU member states? It's too expensive. Or Wärtsilä, just here, producing those huge engines for huge cruise ships and transmissions. But once again, this is also not so much about metal anymore. It's much more about data. Well, access to data. Now we have this free flow of data principle in the European Union. We've changed our public sector information directive, providing better and more access to data sets, publicly owned data sets in Europe, and so on. So access to data sets, it's really crucial for us. Then when talking about this funding, then we set an aim to invest at least 20 billion euros in the year 2020 in the European Union, and then during the decades, every year, 20 billion euros in a year. So, funding, data, now ethical issues. It was in Takamatsu 3 years ago, already during a G7 meeting, when 6 out of 7, they asked for some kind of ethical principle dealing with AI. One of those G7 countries had some doubts about this. But I myself, I think some kind of ethical principles, guidelines, codes is needed also to deal with AI. If somebody will invest huge amounts of money to create some solutions based on AI, then Maybe we will say later on that, sorry, you created a Frankenstein, and at least in Europe, it's not allowed to use this solution. Then it will be just waste of somebody's money. So now we launched those ethical guidelines for the European Union. There will be test periods. And I'm absolutely sure this kind of guidelines are needed for all of us. Because when people are thinking today about the artificial intelligence, then some people, they think about those efficiency issues. How to prolong my lifetime, for example, about diagnostic, my relations with penicillinum before surgery operation. When medical doctor has to understand about my personal health record, 170 pages, it will take at least 3 hours for medical doctors. But when system based on artificial intelligence will deal with those issues, it will take maximum 3 seconds. And accuracy, when medical doctors are dealing with those issues, is near to 70%. When system based on AI will deal with those issues, 95%, and so on. Some other people, they are thinking about their jobs. You know about those stories. Robots, AI, they will take over our jobs, and then we will be not needed in this world anymore. I believe in progress. Progress always created more jobs than progress used to destroy those jobs. But anyway, I can understand about those people who are afraid to lose their jobs. Time is over already. So we have to send messages to those people also. Lifelong learning has to become as a reality. Some other people, when thinking about artificial intelligence, they are thinking about singularity, about the day when computers in general will be smarter than human beings. And of course, we all know, speed of calculations is higher when temperature is lower. It means those computers will destroy atmosphere, protecting our planet, because then temperature will be lower and it will be end. All of us. So with our ethical guidelines, we would like to provide some kind of visibility, some kind of legal certainty to our ordinary people and also to our developers. But sorry, time is over. I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you, thank you. There is a question from the audience sent already through the Slido, and we have some catchbox mics to throw around as well. I'll start with the first one from the Slido. So in order to make commercial applications, we need data on people. So how do you envision a data set on individual persons that can be compiled in EU? What sort of data set could be compiled per person?
I think those issues are already regulated, and new regulations are not needed to form some kind of data sets. We have this free flow of data principle, which says very, very clearly that forceful data localization is prohibited. We have general data protection regulation who says how you can use personal data in an anonymous way, for what you can use data more easily, for example, for statistical purposes, and so on. So I think during the last 4 years we were able to find solution already for those situations. But in every concrete case there can be some kind of specificities. I'm not able to provide answers right now.
But so far so good. There's not going to be another database created on our identities.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Anyone have questions from the audience? I throw a catch box.
What should I do with it?
Just talk into it.
Talking to me, okay. Thank you very much for the talk. I have a question about the ethical guidelines that the European Commission has issued, and it is saying actually that safety is very important, one issue, and also I think it is presuming that we should not go so far as to make AI into an autonomous agent who is making decisions with its own capacity to decide what to do. So it's more or less very carefully actually looking that that general intelligence should not go more quickly than people controlling it. Isn't it also an analogy? You were speaking about GDPR as people who are lowering the standards. In EU, I think people are also in very different how quickly they would like to develop. And my question is, do you think the Estonians, when they could decide about it, wouldn't say that autonomous AI, also an ethical, moral agent who can make choices, should come more quickly, that we should not stop thinking just because we are so afraid that the machines will make decisions that we are not able to control?
Definitely. With those ethical guidelines, our aim wasn't to slow progress. It wasn't our aim.
Doing in a certain way.
No. I don't think so. I hope it will speed up even progress. So, what kind of different choices when thinking about those solutions based on AI we can see globally? In China, it's somehow state-centric approach, and their approach is focused on states, and I'm absolutely sure we will never accept this social credit system they have in China in the European Union. Because if all your future will be determined by some action which took place in the past, then sorry, it's not for us. So in the United States, their approach is mainly based, or much more based on corporations. And in Europe, we decided to take human-centric approach. The same about Japan. And I would like to say that when we prepared our ethical guidelines for AI, then there was deep cooperation between Japan and the European Union. So I don't want to say that some countries are totally in wrong way, but I think this human-centric approach is the only really acceptable and good approach for Europe and for our citizens. So if there is clarity, legal certainty, then it's much easier to create something, some new solutions based also on AI. Without this visibility, clarity, it's not about strict rules, it's about principles. But anyway, without those principles, without knowing what is good, what is really bad, where we would like to go, where we don't want to go, and so on, process will be much slower.
We have a question from the audience. From Hannes has said, if and how should be AI regulated in military equipment and technologies development?
Somehow it's regulated already. So we have strict regulations about landmines, and we can say that this is also about AI. So it's regulated already, and this human-centric approach is needed for civilians and then for military people as well. So I cannot see any big differences. So people, of course, they are much more worried about those drones who are using facial recognition system and who are able to put those 3 grams of explosive on right faces. So, yeah, I saw this in some kind of movies, but I think, generally speaking, approach has to be exactly the same. In military sector, for civilians, no difference.
Right.
Generally speaking.
Any other questions from the audience? I know, yeah, there's one question. Let's send over the mic.
Okay, such a huge mic. It's not such it's not a question actually. I just want to make it more clear that China do have in 2017, China has published its cybersecurity law, and after that, this China Cyberspace Administration, aka the CAC, has also decided to make this personal data protection law, I think. So it will be there if it's not already there, just for everyone who is interested. Thank you.
Yeah, we know about that, but there are huge differences between Chinese law and those rules we have in the European Union, different approaches. And that as I said already, I don't want to say that our rules, they are good rules, and rules you have in China, those are bad rules. Different societies, different approaches, it's fully acceptable. For Chinese people, maybe it's okay. For European people, Chinese rules, it's most likely not so okay.
Great, and to transition to our next session with Janer Gorohhov, the co-founder and COO of Veriff, the online identity verification platform, I would like to invite Janer also on stage to have a little discussion around. Please welcome with him an applause. Yeah. Just to have a quick, intriguing debate, Europe versus rest of the world when it comes to the online identity verification. You provide global solutions around that area, and how do we feel about Europe? What are your thoughts? Is there some sort of intrigue? Are we stronger? Are we weaker? What do you guys think?
Definitely depends how we measure it. There were pretty good points from Andrus as well. Are we going to go with how many patents does different online identity verification service providers have? Or is it actually being human-centric in the sense and providing the people that we're actually trying to help with the understanding and the transparency that we're doing? In terms of that, I think it's more important, and that's what we are standing for as well, to offer this transparency, as we've seen the government doing so with the data. So in my thoughts, I think we have a pretty good standard with the whole general data protection regulation, which actually makes this framework to do so.
Good. Andrus, do you have a comment on that?
Well, for different situations, different types of authentication systems are needed. So in Estonia, we are very proud about our ID cards, smart ID cards, and it works really well in Estonia, but it's pretty complicated to use that kind of systems in all the situations. Not everywhere identification using facial recognition systems is needed. By the way, they are using facial recognition also in fish farms, so it works.
Fish faces or human faces?
Yeah, in Norway they are able to provide individual medical treatment to single fish, so using facial recognition system. So it depends on situation. So for Klarna payment system, identification or authentication is quite easy. If they know about your email address, they know also about your normal behavior, and if there will be some kind of irregularities, you bought something you didn't buy before during the midnight, and then they will ask for another question, but if not, they will credit immediately. It works. So definitely different identification systems are needed today and also in the longer run. So I think Europe is doing quite well. And in Estonia, I think our digital success story was mainly based on those single digital identities guaranteed by the government. So we're doing in this meaning a little bit better than US government is doing. Sorry, don't quote.
Great. We can still be proud and feel safe about Estonia and Europe. Thank you very much, Andrus.
Thank you, and all the best.
Thanks.
Thank you.